So here's chapter 8, recording number 2. So reaching and pulling safely, um, if at all possible, we like to lift and carry rather than drag or pull. For a body drag, you're going to use the same body mechanics that you would lift and move, try to carry a patient with. However, you want to keep your back locked in a slight curve, keep your abs tight, kneel so that you can minimize that distance that you actually have to lean over. You want to extend your arms no more than 15 to 20 inches in front of you. When you can pull no further because your hands have reached the front of your torso, stop, move back a little bit. We don't recommend just grabbing and pulling until you can't anymore, or dragging as you're walking. It's more like inchworm scooting. So you want to continue to alternate pulling the patient and then repositioning yourself over and over and over. So this is kind of getting some leverage here. They've got a hold of his belt and they've got a hold under his arms, and they're just kind of scooting him around that corner. To drag a patient across the bed, you want to kneel on the bed so that you don't actually reach beyond that 15 to 20 inches. And you're going to drag them toward you. If you can use like a sheet or a blanket rather than dragging them by their clothing, it'll work a lot better, especially if you have a couple of different people that can help you drag that patient across the bed. It's much safer for your back to do it that way. For a hospital transfer, you're going to go from a bed to the stretcher or vice versa. Make sure that you put the stretcher at the same height or just slightly higher than the bed. The one you're moving from should be a little bit higher than the one you're moving to, and not significantly. We don't want to jostle our patient, but definitely give yourself some gravitational assistance. Whenever you're on the far side of the move, so you're ending up moving away from you, make sure you kneel on the bed, drag in increments. Don't just stretch out as far as you can. Again, that makes you more susceptible to injuries. Log rolling the person onto their side is how we're going to move a patient onto a backboard. You want to keep as close to the patient's side as possible. You're generally going to roll toward you unless the patient is vomiting significantly, then you roll towards your patient or towards your partner. Okay, that's just always kind of a given. You want to try and keep yourself relatively straight, relatively close to your patient. You want to roll in one fluid movement until your patient is up on their side. If you bend their knees or kind of cross their ankles a little bit, that gravity will help you. Have them cross their arms across their chest as well, so you're not fighting their body mechanics to get them over. You're going to actually support the patient on your legs when you roll them, so make sure that you have a pretty good center of gravity going. Whenever possible, try to use a device that can be rolled, so like our cots, instead of pulling, pushing, dragging, etc. When you don't have a wheeled device, make sure that you carry the patient appropriately for whatever device it is that you are using. Patients often weigh about 120 to 220 on average for an adult. Try and estimate that weight. You don't have to be spot on, but make sure that you have enough people to safely lift the patient. You want to try and use 4 providers if possible to lift. Definitely more stable for the patient requires less strength for each person, but make sure that you have balance, okay? We talked about this a little bit earlier. Don't have two on one side and one on the other, because it might end up tipping your patient over. Make sure that you know your limitations. If you have an injury, don't try and sacrifice yourself to lift the patient. If the patient is over 250 pounds, make sure that you have 4 providers. It's not worth risking your health. Make sure that you have the proper equipment as well. There are limitations as far as weight for cots and whatnot. A lot of places have what are called bariatric units available that have special equipment to handle patients that weigh significantly more than what the cots can hold. Most of our cots, I believe, go up to 400 to 500 pounds depending on the model, but we do get patients that are more than that. So utilize your resources. Lifting and carrying a patient on a backboard or a stretcher. More than half of the patient's weight rests on the head half of the vise more than on the foot. So generally you're going to put the stronger portions of your stronger partners at the head portion of either of those. Here's the best way to do it. So one at the head, one at the foot, and then one on either side. When you're rolling a wheeled ambulance stretcher, make sure that it's in the fully elevated position. And the person that's at the foot portion is the force. The one at the head is kind of the one that's steering. Here is a stair chair. I know that I've brought it up several times. This is what it actually looks like. This is for, of course, taking patients up and down stairs, but you also can utilize it if you have to get somebody out around tight corners. But in order to use this, your patient must be conscious and their condition must allow them to sit in a seated position. You actually have to buckle them to this. It's relatively lightweight compared to the majority of our equipment. And then you have fold-out handles both on the back and then at the foot. Most of the models that we have, they have these rubber wheels here at the back that you can go ahead and pull down. When you lean the patient back, these rubber tracks will end up sliding along the stairs, making it a lot easier to come down. Just make sure that the person at the foot is ready to control that. Otherwise, you're basically going to run them over, or you're going to end up dropping your patient backwards, which is not a great idea. When you have your patient in a stair chair, make sure that they have their arms crossed securely across their chest. They're really not going to like that feeling of being leaned back so far. And if they end up reaching out and grabbing for something, they're going to end up throwing everybody over. So just tell them, hey, just let us do all the work. Give yourself a hug. If you start getting nervous, hug tighter. Do not reach out for things or all of us are going to fall. And most of the time, patients are pretty good at heeding that warning. Every once in a while, you'll get one that you have to remind constantly. Another option for stairs is to use a backboard. If you have a patient that's unresponsive, they must be laid down or they must be immobilized fully. Make sure that you go ahead and use that backboard. Typically, we're going to be moving the patient down the stairs on a backboard directly to a stretcher and laying them on top of it. So make sure that you have the stretcher prepared outside. If somebody needs to go turn it around or put it in a better position, definitely have them do that. The stronger of the EMTs is going to be at the head, like we've already talked about. You're going to just secure that backboard straight to the stretcher for the most part. There's every once in a while where we'll end up taking our patient off the backboard if it was just a moving device and they don't actually need immobilized, or they are relatively conscious and we were just using this. But for the most part, if we're going to do this, we're just going to leave them on it. Loading and unloading into an ambulance. Make sure that you have a firm grip. And make sure that everything hooks where it's supposed to. You can see this little bar down here. There's actually a clip on the inside of the ambulance. You want to push in far enough that this catches on that clip, because otherwise when you go to lift the wheels, your patient's head is going to end up sliding out of the ambulance, and we certainly don't want that. So you'll lift it up into the ambulance. Make sure that you go all the way in until you hear this clip, and then, or you'll hear it clink because it'll go over that clip, and then pull it back. Make sure that it's secured on that before you decide to raise the wheels. Newer models are pretty much self-loading. They raise the wheels all by themselves, but you still have to hold them there while those wheels come up. So it can get a little bit strenuous. If you have to, you can put you and your partner at the foot end, one on each corner, in order to raise that up and not completely wear yourself out. Other models need to be lowered and lifted. So you'll end up putting it in and you'll grasp the red handles and pull them towards you. And your partner can lift up the wheels and then push it in. There are clamps in the ambulance to hold the cot in place. So once you get it in, there'll be a place for the front two wheels to go, and then you have to slide it over to the side and it has to actually click in. So make sure that you hear that click of it clipping in. Team actions must be coordinated. You have to know when everybody is ready to move. Typically, there's going to be a team leader that is going to direct everybody. They are going to say, hey, you need to be here. Hey, you need to be here. You're going to discuss how you're going to lift the patient before you ever actually move the patient. So make sure everybody's on the same page and knows what's going to happen before it actually happens. Preparatory commands are going to be used. On 3, we're going to lift, and then you give the countdown. Make sure everybody knows exactly what count you're going on. You have to use a couple of other things as well. The example on the screen is the team leader says, all ready to stop, to get the team's attention, and then says stop. Another example, you have a patient that's up. Okay, everybody ready to lower. On 3, we're going to go ahead and lower down, and then 1, 2, 3. And make sure that you're very clear in how you're talking. Make sure, again, plan ahead so that you know exactly what route everybody's going to take. You want to select the methods that are going to use the least amount of lifting and carrying. So the shortest direction, trying to save everybody's back. We want the least amount of strain possible. So don't do anything that's super intricate, because everybody's going to end up getting caught up in the plan and you could potentially have somebody hurt themselves. We'll continue on in the next one.